Some unions veering to the right this Tuesday night. Why more labor groups are endorsing the Conservatives.
I am deeply touched to have them on side.
And the policies Pierre Poilievre once rejected that he's now embracing.
He is lying to you.
Security snafu, the uproar after top U.S. officials share top secret military plans in a group chat and mistakenly include a journalist. Ceasefire at the Black Sea, what Ukraine and Russia have agreed to and what's still unclear. Plus, the beaver logs in 50 years as an official Canadian symbol.
Well, it's just this animal that has become our great comeback story.
How this designation spawned from a spat with Americans.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Day 3 of the federal election campaign, and there are some surprising developments that reveal shifting loyalties as all the parties watch the opinion polls. The latest poll, this one done by Leger, shows the Liberal Party of Canada leading in voting intentions. 44% of those surveyed say if an election were held today, they would vote Liberal, compared to 38% for the Conservatives. Only 6% say they'd choose the NDP. The party leaders are all jockeying to embrace policies they hope are vote winners. Today, the Conservative leader embraced pharmacare and dental care, and the Conservatives got a big endorsement that usually goes to the NDP. Our coverage begins with David Akin.
Well, Donna, this is Hamilton, steel town, a union town.
And the country's steelworkers union, 250,000 strong, is backing the NDP in this election, as it often does. But an increasing number of other private sector unions are lining up behind Pierre Poilievre's Conservative campaign.
We need boots, not suits.
Thank you.
It's another slogan from the Conservative leader, but it's one backed up with policy. He will extend a $4,000 apprenticeship grant set to end this month that he says will help create 350,000 new jobs in the trades. That's one reason the Boilermakers union is endorsing Poilievre. It's the first time that the 12,000-member union has endorsed a federal Conservative.
I am deeply touched to have them on side, and I hope there will be many more incredible trade unions that train up our people and build up our country to put Canada first.
Other private sector unions representing, for example, electrical contractors, carpenters, and general laborers are also praising Poilievre's plan. These endorsements, though, are the payoff for dozens of visits Poilievre has made to shop floors around the country in the last 18 months, talking directly to workers and their union leadership.
They will be building homes, building pipelines, digging mines, moving our goods, literally building this country with their own hands. They will join with us to bring home our jobs and make us strong again.
Still, Poilievre's political opponents are quick to warn that as an MP, Poilievre has voted against minimum wage laws and voted in favor of legislation making it harder to go on strike.
Pierre Poilievre has just consistently throughout his entire career, which is basically his entire adult life, in the House of Commons, voted against workers. Voted against unions and non-unionized workers.
And yet, Poilievre's push for support from organized labor may yield his party new seats here in Southern Ontario's manufacturing heartland. Donna.
David, the Conservative leader was asked today whether he'd keep the national dental care and pharmacare programs brought in by the Liberals and supported by the NDP. Here's what he said.
We will protect these programs, and no one who has them will lose them.
That is a policy U-turn for the Conservatives, David. What's going on here?
Well, it was a bit of a surprise, Donna, because when the Trudeau government introduced these programs, the Conservatives all voted against them. But right now, we have 1.2 million Canadians who are saving about $790 a year on their dentist bill. We have 9 million Canadians who have access to free birth control, and about 4 million Canadians who have access to free diabetes medicine. So it would seem to make political common sense not to alienate those voters now accessing these new services.
Okay, David Akin, thanks. The NDP was key to keeping the last Liberal minority government in power, voting with the government and pushing the Liberals to introduce things like dental care and pharmacare. Though they weren't in power, New Democrats had significant influence. Touria Izri looks at how in this campaign the dynamics for the party appear to be shifting.
I'm sure people listening are like, that's me too.
It's a difficult chapter Jagmeet Singh is now acknowledging he's in the middle of.
Let's be clear, there's massive challenges. I've got no illusions about that.
After repeated questions, Singh addressed his party's collapsing poll numbers.
There are some serious challenges that we're up against. And working people are up against massive challenges. You got billionaires and massive corporate landlords.
The NDP leader did not make a policy announcement Tuesday. Instead, he used this campaign stop to attack Liberal leader Mark Carney and his ties to the investment firm Brookfield. He met with the tenant of a nearby apartment building who's accusing the company of jacking up rents.
Not just a little bit of profit, but huge, huge amounts of money.
Carney resigned from the board of Brookfield in January. Singh also stopped by the Village in Toronto as part of a bid to court progressive voters. But even that demographic appears to be turning away from the New Democrats. A new Angus Reid poll found that 50% of people who voted NDP in the last election are planning on going Liberal this time around. Singh is also facing mounting competition from the Conservatives, now promising to preserve those dental, pharma, and childcare policies the NDP first fought for.
He has said that. And so you can't trust the guy that has voted against a thing, said it is a bad thing, and then on the even election all of a sudden says, oh, no, I'm not going to cut it. He is lying to you.
How are you doing?
Singh still has the support of some significant unions, like QP and the ATU. And Singh is hoping to build on that with a campaign event in the riding of Hamilton Mountain, a seat that's flipped between red and orange since the 1980s. Touria Izri, Global News, Hamilton.
The federal Liberal leader focused on the Canadian military today, promising to modernize everything from its equipment to how it recruits and pays its members. Mark Carney calls it an unprecedented acceleration of investment in Canada's armed forces, a promise which, as Mackenzie Gray reports, would cost a significant amount of money.
For Mark Carney, everything comes back to Donald Trump.
The priorities of the United States, once closely aligned to our own, have shifted. Our sovereignty is under threat.
And to guard against that, the Liberal leader reiterated his pledge to boost defense spending to 2% of GDP by 2030, the minimum required by NATO. To get there, he's recommitting to recruiting more Canadian Armed Forces members and giving them a raise, plus buying new submarines, a fleet of drones, and heavy-duty icebreakers. Projects that Carney wants Canadian domestic production involvement in to stop.
Sending dollar after dollar south of the border to a nation that is threatening us.
But cutting out the largest defense contractor in the world is easier said than done.
We're going to not be able to just sort of pivot and walk away from or undermine our reliance on the United States, which is really pervasive right now.
The United States is still a strong ally.
Despite that sentiment, the Liberals are considering ripping up the $85 billion deal to buy the F-35 fighter jets. Since the planes are American-made, the U.S. can turn off some of the jet's capabilities without Canada's permission.
The Minister of Defense and the procurement will explore how the F-35 program could be adjusted, including greater investment here in Canada.
Great to have you here. Trump's impact isn't just on the military. Carney visiting rural Nova Scotia lumber mill, an industry the U.S. president has specifically targeted.
We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada.
Softwood lumber already has tariffs, but they're likely to be increased on Trump's April 2nd deadline, leading Carney to warn Canadian businesses to prepare for the worst.
The point is to have substantive discussions. The point is not theater. The point is to get serious. Sovereign nation to sovereign nation.
Carney's defense announcement came with few details like timelines or cost, Donna, but he did say he'd release a fully costed platform and give future defense announcements later in the campaign.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Nova Scotia, thanks. A Liberal MP and former cabinet minister has cancelled his plans to retire from politics. Sean Fraser says he decided to seek re-election in his Nova Scotia riding after getting a call from Carney.
I have assurances and comfort that I'm going to be able to be closer to home than I was over the course of the past few years and still make a contribution to the country that we all love.
Fraser said in December that politics was putting too much of a strain on his family life. The Liberals were trailing in the polls back then. Today, he says his decision is more about the opportunity to serve than any political calculation. The U.S. president is standing behind his national security team after an extraordinary breach. Top officials used a group chat on the messaging app Signal to discuss detailed military plans to conduct a bombing raid on targets in Yemen and inadvertently included a journalist in that chat. As top Republicans and Democrats demand answers, Donald Trump is downplaying the whole thing.
There was no classified information, as I understand it. They used a app, if you want to call it an app, that a lot of people use, a lot of people in government use, a lot of people in the media use.
Others are calling it everything from careless to incompetent. Eric Sorensen explains what happened and whether it's likely anyone will be held accountable.
It just so happens the U.S. President's national security team was in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee Tuesday, and Democrats pounced.
Sloppy, careless, incompetent.
He's talking about a stunning 1-2 breach of national security. First, that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth disclosed war plans in a group chat on Signal, a commercial messaging app. Plus, the group included a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic.
The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets.
Goldberg wasn't sure it was real till the bombs started falling. The U.S. military began striking Iranian-backed Houthi forces in Yemen earlier this month. Goldberg removed himself from the chat, notified a senior official, then wrote about it, withholding the most sensitive information.
Minute-by-minute accounting of what was about to happen.
He even received texts with emojis, the chat group congratulating itself. That group included the vice president and top members of Donald Trump's national security team, plus Goldberg, who was added by Michael Waltz, the national security advisor, apparently an accident.
Effective.
Trump's first response wasn't reassuring.
I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
How did you learn that a journalist was privy to...
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth tried to discredit the journalist, then denied the reports.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
But Britt Hume of Fox News, no less, posted, "Oh, for God's sake, the administration has already confirmed the authenticity of the message."
What happened here is they traded off security for convenience. You just can't do that.
Back at that Senate hearing, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard.
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address? You were not TG on this group chat?
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge?
The officials say the group texts were not classified, and later President Trump backed them up.
It wasn't classified information.
Trump said they will look into the use of that Signal app. But is Mike Waltz on thin ice for including a journalist in the chat group?
Thank God for American leadership.
Waltz praised Trump for attacking the Houthis, and Trump suggested Waltz will be sticking around.
That man is a very good man.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Canada has stopped millions of dollars in payments to Tesla pending an investigation into a surge in EV rebate claims during the final weekend of that program. In a statement, Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland says she asked the department to stop all payments for Tesla vehicles in order to fully examine each claim individually and determine whether all are eligible and valid. 4 Tesla stores claimed roughly 8,600 sales, which is $43 million worth of rebates in the final days of the program. Freeland says Tesla, run by Elon Musk, will be excluded from future EV rebates if U.S. tariffs are in place. Doctors treating Pope Francis have revealed how close he was to death. The head of the Pope's medical team says they briefly considered suspending treatment when the Pope had a breathing crisis in late February. They decided to attempt all possible treatment and drugs, even though that might damage his major organs. The Pope improved and he was discharged on Sunday after more than 5 weeks in hospital. Today, King Charles and Queen Camilla announced they have postponed their planned visit to see the Pope in early April. In BC, 3 men who were heli-skiing in the backcountry have been killed in an avalanche. It happened yesterday near Kootenay Lake. Police say the avalanche swept away an experienced group of 4 heli-skiers. 2 men from BC and 1 man from Idaho were killed. Another BC man was critically injured.
Their skills obviously are very high. And by the time our team had got there, they had already uncovered the 4 individuals who were buried. And we had 1 who had vital signs, was responding, and sadly we had 3 who weren't.
Avalanche Canada says rising temperatures are creating dangerous conditions in the area. A temporary truce in the Black Sea coming up, what a maritime ceasefire means for Russia and Ukraine. Russia has finally agreed to a partial ceasefire with Ukraine, but it only involves shipping in the Black Sea, and Russia says it will only hold up its end of the deal if certain sanctions are lifted. Redmond Shannon reports on what's been agreed to and whether it's a step towards a complete ceasefire.
Could the Black Sea be the staging ground for the beginning of the end of the war in Ukraine? That's certainly what Russia, Ukraine and the US say is the ultimate goal. Tuesday's deal, brokered by the US during talks in Saudi Arabia, aims for the safe navigation of ships on this huge strategic body of water. For a year and a half, Ukrainian grain ships have had to hug the coastlines of NATO members Romania, Bulgaria and Turkey. This deal could allow them to travel more directly to the Mediterranean Sea. Vladimir Zelensky welcomed the deal, but the Ukrainian president says 1 million questions remain, including how the truce is monitored and what happens if Russian warships violate it by moving into the western Black Sea. Zelensky said he believes the deal has taken immediate effect and has no conditions attached. But in an immediate sign of discord, the Kremlin statement said everything is conditional on the lifting of certain international sanctions against its commercial shipping and banking sectors.
We're thinking about all of them right now. There are about 5 or 6 conditions. We're looking at all of them.
The United States is giving several meaningful wins to Putin. And not getting anything real in return. Even a maritime ceasefire will favor Russia far more than it will Ukraine.
Back on the shores of the Black Sea, there is skepticism too.
The Russians never keep their words. All these deals will not be in Ukraine's favor.
Tuesday's statement said efforts continue to put in place last week's proposal from Putin and Trump to halt strikes on energy targets for 1 month. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Still ahead, why an Oscar-winning filmmaker was attacked and arrested in the West Bank. This is the aftermath of another round of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. According to Gaza's health ministry, 23 Palestinians, including 7 children, were killed in the overnight attacks. It's estimated nearly 700 people have died in Gaza since Israel resumed its attacks a little over a week ago, breaking a 2-month ceasefire. One of the people caught up in the conflict is the Palestinian co-director of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. He was attacked by Israeli settlers and then taken away by soldiers in the occupied West Bank. As Neetu Garcha reports, what happened is like a scene from his film.
Hey, no!
As Palestinians were about to eat iftar, the meal breaking the Ramadan fast, an unprovoked attack by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank.
Back to the car, back to the car!
According to activists like Anna Lipman, a Jewish Canadian who was called to the scene by neighbors.
We were immediately ambushed by masked settlers with rocks and sticks.
She says Palestinian Oscar-winning filmmaker Hamdan Bilal is injured but back home with family. The Center for Jewish Nonviolence reports he was attacked by Israeli settlers, then removed from an ambulance by soldiers, a claim the Israeli military denied. The IDF did confirm the detention of 3 Palestinians and 1 Israeli civilian over suspicion of rock hurling.
Hamdan is far from the first person, the first Palestinian, who has been taken to the hospital, who has been arrested unfairly, and everyone deserves to have the media attention on them, just as Hamdan does.
And that's what No Other Land is asking for. Despite its Academy Award for Best Documentary, the film still does not have a U.S. distributor, and there's limited pickup across North America.
He was punished for speaking, for making the film, and for winning an Oscar for his film. It's a punishment.
This Palestinian-Canadian restaurant owner and filmmaker highlights the dehumanization of Palestinians and the hypocrisy of the international community in addressing their plight.
What is happening in Gaza, genocide, massacres, killing of children, destruction of massive level, like it's painful. But what is more painful is that this could happen for 2 years and the world is watching.
Watching as violence and injustice grows. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Next, how Canada's largest rodent became our national symbol. Its flat tail and buck teeth are what make it distinctive, but it's the behavior of the beaver that seems to symbolize Canadians. Industrious and determined, beavers are builders. And for 50 years, the beaver has been Canada's national symbol. Heidi Petracek explains how that came to be after a cross-border battle with our southern neighbors.
You can see they've stripped off all the bark.
Our search for the great Canadian beaver brought us to Nova Scotia's Shubenacadie Wildlife Park, where a pair of rescued beavers are raising 2 kits.
Yeah, they can be pretty shy.
Too shy, it seems, to make an appearance for our cameras, to mark 50 years of the beaver as a national symbol of Canada.
What triggered the designation of the beaver as a national symbol of Canada began in the United States and New York State.
You see, back in the 1970s, New York wanted to declare the beaver its state mammal. The animal's history south of the border echoed our own. The beaver was crucial in the early fur trade, a valued commodity that attracted settlers to spread from east to west. Canada had already put the beaver on its first stamp. So when folks found out Americans were trying to claim the industrious rodent as their own,
there was a tremendous public outpouring. Thousands of people wrote, and it really galvanized people.
And so on March 24, 1975, the National Symbol of Canada Act received royal assent, elevating the beaver to the iconic status it enjoys today, the stuff of official currency and Canadiana.
It's just this animal that has become our great comeback story.
Rebounding after being hunted near extinction, now found from coast to coast, capable of building dams large enough to be seen from space, like the world's largest in Wood Buffalo National Park. They're easy to relate to, tenacious builders who persevere against all odds.
I'm glad we chose the right animal for the right time, for the right country.
And while New York State still named it their state animal,
but they're only states and we're a country.
There's pride in claiming the scrappy mammal as Canadian, perhaps now more than ever. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen, and keeping with the theme, tonight's Your Canada is this beaver sculpture in Port Elgin, Ontario. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.